Hello everyone, we're back, Module 4. And this module is going to be basically on selecting and transforming. So right here in our scene we have this vase and table that we made with a little tree in it almost. And what I want to show you is with our selection tool here selected, you can also hit Q on your keyboard. You can start to select some of these objects in the scene. And when we select it, it turns green. And when we select another object, the other one will turn green, and the last one turns off. But if we hold down Shift, we can start to select multiple objects. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to select the branch. And if you notice, the branch is green because it's the last thing that we selected, same as this vase here, this crystal vase. And with the vase being the last thing we selected, in our outliner, we see the name and its transforms. Now I'm going to deselect everything, and I'm going to show you some other things that we can do to select. Well, one of them is a drag select. And as you can see, I can drag. Let me go ahead and set these lights maybe on a layer. I'm going to grab them. I'm going to come down here to my outliner, and I'm going to add a layer and then make them a reference. I'll go ahead and name it just so I know which layer they're on. Name it lights. That way I can set it as a reference layer and we no longer can select them. Pretty cool. So now I can drag select my objects pretty easily in the scene. If I'm off of the object and I drag onto it, it selects it. But we also have this lasso tool, similar to Photoshop lasso. But whatever it drags over, it will select. So it gives you a little bit more freedom than just a 90-degree angle on a square or a rectangle. And then lastly, down below here, we have this painting selection. We'll cover that a little later. But usually I just kind of stick with the normal selection tool. I think it's efficient enough to do it. Oops, I'm in component mode. Go back into object mode there with my hotbox. But as I selected this vase and we look at it over here in the outliner, we can see that we have all of our translation settings. In other words, we have translate X, Y, and Z throughout our movement, our rotate, and our scale. Now if we hit W, bring up our controller here, we can see that it basically allows us to translate. And the same settings here in our outliner for translate, rotate, and scale, we can change the attribute of those objects either within the outliner here or utilizing the on-screen tools for translate, such as hitting W. We can also select them here on the left through their normal sidebar icons. So translate is W, or the top icon there. And it gives us our X, Y, and Z. And as we hover over each control, you can see it kind of turns yellow. That means that we're on that Z axis ready to translate. And each time we start to change or move these objects away from their zero location, the numbers change up top there. Okay, so right now we're like what, a negative 195. We can slide it back into the positive 143. So these numbers are pretty important because you don't want to go too crazy with decimal point placements. Another thing that we kind of want to take into account is each time we select the object, we want to make sure that we can rotate logically, we can scale logically, and we know how to use these in viewport tools here, these tools that we can see. And it can be kind of tricky, so especially with rotation, because rotation can get kind of wonky if you don't rotate on an axis. Like right now we're rotating on a Z, and that's pretty nice because rotation is usually 180, 90 degrees, 45 degrees. Very rarely does it go into like these oblique type degrees where it may be like -20, -30, things like that. Anyways, you want to make sure when you're rotating using the tools, you want to stay on these axis aligns, these red, yellow, and blue circles, because that rotates it and constrains it within those axes. If we rotate it with the blue circle on the outside, we'll start to get small changes in perhaps the rotation that we don't want. So let's take a look at the outliner now. Because I moved it without paying attention to those, X, Y, and Z lines, I have some really strange positioning now for my rotation. Let's set that back to 0. Let's type in 0. So please be careful when you're rotating objects. It can get squirrely on you and get, off balance. Now let's look at scale. Scale is pretty simple. Now, as you see, scale is set at 1. If it was set at 0, well, there would be nothing there because we have no scale to it. So it's always defaulted at 1. Now the scale tool is pretty nice. If you choose this yellow box here in the center and you scale out, well, you can see it's scaling uniformly, okay, through all X, Y, and Z. All right, and that's pretty important to know, because if you grab the handle here at Z, well, you're only scaling in the Z axis. Same as Y here. And so that sets our scale, askew. It's not really the same scale uniformly. I'll go ahead and set that back to 1. So again, anytime you're utilizing these tools, viewport tools, and you're moving things, make sure that you stay organized, again, within your rotation, your translation, and your scale. Things can always be fixed, but at times it can get pretty confusing. So that's pretty much, all of the translation tools that are available to us right now. We will explore more of them as we start to move forward. So in the next video, we're going to take a look at organizing our scene objects, and I'll see you then.